Hi and welcome. I'm Jane Chadwick. I'm a dormant volcanologist who's worked in education for a number of years, including at the Science Gallery.
And I'm Shane Bergin. I'm a physicist and I work at the School of Education in University College Dublin. And this is 101. It's a podcast show where we follow people learning new skills and new things. 101 looks at everything to do with learning and things like motivation.
Yeah, and actually we're zeroing in on motivation and what drives people to learn, especially something new in this episode. And it's going to take us to the Science Gallery, which is a really cool space in the centre of Dublin, which has a kind of, as you would expect, a gallery type feel with all sorts of artworks, but also that's kind of mashing that up in really interesting ways with science. And Science Gallery works an awful lot with young people, and we're meeting two of those young people in this episode, Astrid and Thomas, who work with the Science Gallery on the Young Leonardos, advising Science Gallery on what they do. And they're meeting with Cristina Meehan, who is actually a really good friend of mine. She's an amazing person who works in activism and has a degree in political science, and she's going to be speaking to them about activism.
We'll hear from one of my friends too, a sociologist from NUI Galway called Jerry McGurk and his work on leadership.
Cool. So I guess let's hear what happened when Cristina met Astrid and Thomas at the Science Gallery.
My name is Christina Meehan. I work in public engagement for Plan International Ireland. Plan International is a global child rights organisation working in over 71 countries around the world. And we have a huge ambition, which is trying to change norms and attitudes and really make a huge systemic change when it comes to the area of gender equality in particular.
Hi, my name is Astrid and I'm 15 years old. Oh my god, I'm 16. Hi, my name is Astrid and I'm 16 years old. I'm a part of the Young Leonardos here at the Science Gallery, and I love helping the Science Gallery with their new exhibitions. I love how it's different to science in the classroom. So usually when I'm in the classroom, I don't really connect with what the teacher is saying. But when you're in the Science Gallery, you can actually see the science going on. And it's also not just science, it's science with art as well. So it's really different. I really care about gender equality, especially in schools. Like in my school, we only have home ec and business. We don't really get to do woodwork or anything that you would probably have in a boys' school. So I think they should have more of that in a girls' school.
Hi, my name's Thomas. I'm 18 and I'm also part of the Young Leos group. I am also a mentor at Codadojo DCU, and I think that gender equality and overall equality is a very important issue in education, work and normal life. All the research, all the studies point that equality overall is a good thing. In workplaces, it creates better working environments, it creates better teamwork, it creates better products if they're designing products. In education, it's very important, gender equality especially, because it gives girls and boys the opportunity to try subjects that they normally wouldn't. And that is something that should be worked on so that more people get more opportunities to try what they want to do. Hopefully what can be done to solve the issues.
Yeah, what I can do to help stop gender inequality.
Thanks so much for meeting with me and for giving me your time and listening to the work that Plan International do around gender equality. First of all, I wanted to start off by telling you a little bit about my background. So I've been working with Plan for nearly 5 years, and I was first motivated to work with them when I was walking down the street on Bagot Street, which is where their office is, and I saw a big poster for the Because I Am a Girl campaign. When I Googled it, I saw that they were doing work around child marriage, and it was something that really resonated with me. I had, at that time, already graduated from a degree in politics and a master's in international relations and politics, so I was quite interested in the politics of power relations globally, and particularly around the area of gender. But from a personal perspective as well, I'm half Zambian and half Irish. I was born in Zambia. My mother is Zambian, and actually she was a child bride. So she had her first child when she was 16, her second child when she was 18, her third child sometime later, and that is very common. She didn't have me until 11 years after the third child, but her first 3 children were in her teenage years. And it was very common in Zambia, still is. Zambia has one of the highest percentages of child marriage, as does neighbouring country Malawi, countries that plan international work in. So on a personal level, it resonated with me, and I was like, this is an organisation I would really like to work for and see if there's anything I can do. But first of all, it required kind of understanding the practice, understanding why this happens in the first place. And really, gender inequality is what underpins it. The idea that somehow girls are a burden to their families economically, and also the idea that they're not as highly valued as boys in terms of what they can actually bring when they go out to the workplace. I suppose I'll just start off with a few questions. Do you think that we have achieved gender equality here in Ireland?
No.
Not nearly.
And what makes you think that?
I feel like pay in certain jobs, why should a man get paid more than a woman for doing the exact same job? It's not right, it's not fair.
In the fields that I'm looking at going into for college, the ratio between men and women is completely skewed towards more men, and that is a problem. I don't think it's particularly enjoyable to go into a course where it's mostly men, because it just is unpleasant when there's not a balance, really.
And I suppose just another way of kind of phrasing that question, do you think women and men are treated the same?
No, definitely not.
No.
I feel like women are like, men are treated more like they can do it, like they don't need help, they're a man, they're a boy or a man, it's okay if they get hurt and because you're a man, you can't cry or whatever. But women, it's like, even from a young age, when you go into, say, Smith's or something like that, you go into the toy aisle and it's all pink and it's all like, do you want a baby Annabelle or a toy house? And when you go into for the boys, they probably have like a Nerf gun or like Transformers, something like that. So you can already see the inequality from a young age, that boys, if they have a gun, like a Nerf gun, they're obviously stronger and they can go off and fight or whatever. And then a woman or a girl, she's just meant to stay at home and have a baby, you know?
There's more kind of Lego constructive, building creative things for guys, whereas for girls it's more a doll.
As a girl, I wasn't brought into that boy aisle and told to, pick whatever you want. I was always brought into the girl aisle, so it's kind of like, this is where you're meant to be, this is your box, this is what's meant for you, don't go in there. Like, it wasn't like a set rule, but like subconsciously you feel that yourself, like, this is for me, that's for a boy. Like, I was talking to my little cousin, and you know the way there's that new I think it's Wonder Woman or Superwoman, and I was like, are you gonna go watch like that movie? And he was like, no, that's for girls, it's like Wonder Woman, why would I like Superman? And I was just like, no, you can watch it as well, it's meant for everyone. And he just didn't get it.
I had a similar experience with my nephew. We were making toys, and we were making superhero cutouts that I stuck to straws so we could blow them away. And I gave my superhero boobs, and he's like, superheroes don't have boobs. And he's 6, and it's so early ingrained that superheroes don't have boobs that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So maybe another question on that is, what do you think gender equality would look like here in Ireland if we were to achieve it?
I think women would be happier in a sense, because they wouldn't have to worry about going into a job where they might get treated less because they're a woman. In schools, they probably feel more comfortable trying to do a subject where it's probably known as like a boy subject. Mostly boys go into it, especially in mixed schools. I know it's probably intimidating being like an only girl in a woodwork class filled with boys. So just having the confidence to do something where it's just a subject that you can do and it's available for everyone.
From my experience, I do music in school, and in a class of about 20, I'm one of 4 boys. They put music on the same subject choice line as physics, another subject which I wanted to do. So I had to choose one over the other, so I chose music, and I'm doing physics outside of school. But I feel like that's part of the subject of gender equality, or like gender inequality, and the fact that they think you can't be creative and do science at the same time. You have to do one or the other.
How as a society do we start to change that though?
I think be more open to what a girl might want to do and what a boy might want to do. So it's going to have to be from a young age, because people get taught through actions and what they see, so also what's on TV and stuff like that. So if a boy in school wants to do homework and it's seen as like a girl's subject, and then all his friends are like slagging him, saying, oh, you want to do homework, like that's so weird or whatever, he's going to feel less inclined to do that subject. So acceptance is a big issue that people need to learn.
I feel like in my school it really wasn't that welcome for guys to be creative musically.
Isn't it strange that at that level you have so many girls wanting to participate in music and probably as many boys, but your choices have been narrowed by the fact that one of the typical boy subjects is at the same time, and then at a later stage then you have a shortage of female acts as headliners at festivals. So it's like, what happens in between school and later on as well that makes girls drop off? We have to look at the issues along the way, and make demands, because there's one thing about saying we need to tolerate things, but we actually have to make demands for change. Taking that we also have issues around gender equality. Perhaps we're a little bit further along on that fight than in other countries. So I just wanted to maybe bring you through an equality quiz, a global equality quiz, to kind of show you the issues globally. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. So every year, how many children under the age of 18 years, girl children, are forced into marriage?
6.5 million.
The leading cause of death for young women 15 to 19 years in the developing world is A, malnutrition, B, pregnancy and childbirth. Approximately how many school-age girls are not in school globally?
70 million.
The question I had for you is, how many times as likely are girls to be malnourished than boys?
4 times as likely, probably.
Yeah, I'd say probably 4 times.
Yeah, not far off. It's the 3 times as likely. Again, those numbers become they're just so huge. It shouldn't be any times as likely. It should be no times as likely. Ideally there should be no hunger whatsoever, but
it was really a big shock to think that's happening. And also the pregnancy and childbirth being the leading cause, because I thought it would have been conflict as well, because I like watching documentaries about like war and stuff like that, especially in like Syria, especially because it's happening right now. And even after watching one of the documentaries, I've decided to volunteer in one of the European countries to help the Syrian refugees. So when I'm 18, after I've like finished secondary school that summer, I'd like to go away and help, because it makes me so sad that I can't do anything because I'm just sitting home watching. And also, with ads like Concern and you send money, you don't really get to, I don't feel like I'm really helping that person. I'd rather be with them and interact with them. So conflict was what I was thinking it would have been, but it was childbirth and pregnancy.
how did you feel about those statistics, Thomas?
They're all shocking, but they didn't surprise me, really. That just says something about the world at the moment. Not the fact that they don't surprise you, but they do shock you.
Yes, I'm a girl. I have dreams. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor, a judge, or maybe a scientist. But I know that none of these dreams will come true. Because I'm a girl, I'll be forced to drop out of school like so many other girls.
After watching that video, it would encourage more people to want to help, especially after her explaining all her dreams and the fact that that won't happen for her because she's a girl.
It was really inspiring video, and it should be on TV. More people should see it. It should be shown in schools, that kind of stuff.
And you're saying it's inspiring. What do you think you can do about it? How did it make you feel you could do anything about it?
It made me want to help educate people around me, like, oh, this is what's going on.
So in a way, you're inspired. How do you think you could make a difference, or how do you think you could come up with a campaign that would do something to make a change? Do you feel, first of all, do you feel like you can on a personal level?
I don't know what I could do except for, because even if I just went there to help, what could I actually do to change what's going on? Like, if you're talking to a man who's about to marry a child, what can you really say to him to make him feel like this is wrong if he's brought up to think that it's right?
We have a youth advisory panels. They work kind of like the Young Leonardos, but for Plan. And in 2015 in Malawi, they were trying to change a law that allows child marriage to happen at the age of 15. They wanted that to be brought up to 18. And by campaigning at their local level, national level and internationally, and by getting signatures, and that was done by youth like you in Ireland, they collected 3,000 signatures on Grafton Street, online. They got the 3,000 signatures. We were able to submit them to the Malawi Youth Advisory Panel, and they were able to submit that to the Malawian government, saying it's not just us, we're not in a vacuum. All these countries, all the youth in these countries actually care and want this changed. The practice was banned in the Marriage, Divorce and Family Relations Act, so it increased the minimum age of marriage from 15 to 18. So it just shows that it doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to necessarily be you physically going there. There are things that you can do in solidarity with people who are facing those issues. But the fight isn't over. So despite the important step, the Malawian constitution still allows children between 15 and 18 to marry with parental consent. And because it might be a traditional cultural practice, that might still go on. So the Malawi youth advocates are still campaigning, and they've taken this on as their new target, and they want to amend the constitution of Malawi to close that loophole. So they'll still be calling on support from youth like you overseas to help them put pressure on their governments and to put pressure on international governments to change that law. So that's a very concrete example of how you can help. How does that sound like something that you could get involved in or would like to get involved in?
Yeah. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
It's a very easy way to get involved and make a huge change, just a signature.
Yeah.
And I feel like putting that signature down, even though it's just such a small thing to you, it makes such a big difference to them.
Is there anything else that you think we could have done differently? How would you have done that maybe in a different way?
Maybe do it like a run, like a charity run or a charity walk, and invite people to come and participate, because I know like Darkness into Light is a huge thing and a lot of my friends participate in that, so that's to help with suicide awareness. So if you did one like that for Plan, I think that would help as well.
Positive things like runs make people look at it and say, this is a great positive thing, that they're doing it for a great cause.
So I learned about how that we're not just, it doesn't mean going over there and physically helping them. We can do things here as a society and as youth in Ireland.
I wanted to look at the issue of gender inequality in Ireland. First of all, we looked around issues in Ireland, how they're very much rooted in norms of what it is to be a girl and what it is to be a boy. And I think we came to the agreement that we still have a lot of problems in our education system and in our marketing and how things are advertised to us. However, when we looked at it at a global level, perhaps we are a little bit further along than in some other societies. So we then looked at issues in Malawi and in countries like Malawi, and how they tried to change the law there, and how Plan and the youth in other countries supported this legal change. That has had a huge impact and has trickled down to local level.
Small things can make big difference. Young people in Ireland or other countries in Europe could have a massive impact in other countries where they aren't as lucky as us or don't have the same resources as us, or laws are stacked against people like women and stacked against them for no reason other than tradition and stigma and that kind of stuff.
Children's safety in countries like Syria and North Korea as well, because I feel like in Syria, it's like, I think people see it as people there as like bad because of the war and everything like that, and presidents like Donald Trump who are like, oh, these people are Muslim, like they're bad, everyone's a terrorist there. I feel like it really bothers me that people don't see that there's children dying every day. They just, I don't know, they don't see it from their point of view, and that really annoys me. That's why I want to volunteer, because I feel like I need to do something to help.
A great quote that I heard yesterday was, a little bit of help is better than a lot of pity. So just go out there and put yourself out there. Don't feel that there is nothing that can be done, because there's always something, even if it's just a small thing.
So what really jumped out at me there was this idea of motivation, and how Christina works so well to bring Astrid and Thomas through this process where they had to tap into things that they were inherently or intrinsically motivated by. Not bringing them on a journey of saying, here's some problems or here's some issues. This is what you should do, because I'm an experienced advocate and I've worked in this for many years, and I'm telling you based on my experience what to do. It would strike me as a learner that wouldn't go so far for me, right? I'd love meeting somebody like Christina. I'd be inspired by them. But I think I'd find her all the more inspiring because she isn't telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was really looking for them to kind of give her their viewpoints on what she was speaking about and things that were important to them. She was tapping into kind of their own agency and their own kind of context and what was valuable and important to them, which I thought was really amazing and a wonderful trait in a teacher, if you can do that.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you think about extrinsic or external motivators that we might associate with education, we think of like exams, right? Mm-hmm. Or getting into a prestigious college, or, setting money as your goal or something like that. Or these are external drivers. They may not be things that resonate with stuff that works for you, and how important it is that a teacher asks you to think about your intrinsic motivations, like your passion for a topic or something like that.
Yeah, what's important to you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these two young people, Astrid and Thomas, you can hear it in their voices when they're talking. They have a desire to affect change. They have a desire to make the world better. You can hear Astrid talking about her plans to go and volunteer. She wants to get involved and she wants to make a difference. And that's wonderful. And that is the best thing you can have on your side when you're trying to learn something, is this internal drive to do it,
And there's sometimes a condescending tone that can come with that then from maybe people who've been around the block a few times, where they're like, oh, you come in here and you say you want to completely radically change the way we approach equality in Ireland, and you're going, oh yeah, but your little part isn't going to make any difference. It's the same argument that's made when people choose not to vote. They're like, my little bit won't count. But Christina here is very skillful in that she doesn't dismiss anyone's ideas, but she provides a scaffold, or she provides a structure around that from which Astrid and Thomas could build. And maybe like 99% of their ideas might go nowhere, but it'll affect them personally, which is huge. But like maybe not many of their ideas will go nowhere, but some of them might go somewhere. And big changes in the past have always happened when one person or a group of people have had a little idea and it grows.
Yeah, and started something. Yeah, and I think, they kind of tapped into that. a lot of problems in the world today seem so huge and so, so impossible to tackle because they're so big. So, climate change and Astrid was speaking about the situation in Syria. And I think those sorts of things, that kind of huge problem can grind people into inaction and to thinking that there is nothing to be done, so I just won't do anything. And I think that was what was really interesting to hear about how through a conversation, Cristina, Astrid and Thomas kind of came to speaking about all sorts of little steps, that might start off small but could have large actions. And Cristina really wonderfully did that, or elegantly did that, by showing them an example of how people just like them did that in the case in Malawi.
Yeah, telling a story of other people like them is so important, and she does it more as a guide on the side rather than a sage on stage, to use those educational jargonistic terms. But for me, they're really useful, because this for me is what student-led learning is that you create a safe space, create a good environment, an excellent teacher, and that you allow those, you create a situation where those young people flourish. Even the word allow is so loaded, right? As in, like, I'm controlling this, as opposed to this is their learning environment. They have agency, they control it, and I'm here to facilitate as a teacher as opposed to drive it. And that for me is absolutely important. And you can think about how that might look in a regular classroom, or indeed anything that we learn, right? If we can somehow find out what is it that makes us tick, what gets you out of bed early in the morning, what makes you motivated, and if you can find a career or find a thing in your life that allows you to play with that all the time, think of how fulfilling and how happy that will make you. And then for everyone around you, I suppose, how productive you would be and how useful to society you might be, how transformative you might be.
Absolutely. So I thought what came through so strongly, and it's really a testament to Astrid and Thomas, how clearly they can put their point across, and how astutely they're viewing what's going on in their world. They are acutely aware of the inequalities that are present in their own education system, and also of the kind of the human right that is education. That access to education is for everyone. It's not a privilege. And I think in having the conversations about how to fix maybe problems in our system here in Ireland, or more broadly in kind of education globally, that it's really important to have those voices, the people who are in it, involved, and have them more than involved, kind of driving things. That idea of agency, that they have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the slogan "Rights, not charity" in this area, and that, it's not us doing them a favour by involving them in discussions about equality or issues that affect them or us more generally, but that they have a right to have a voice. And I think that's super important in education in general, that you listen to the learner, and listening is good for everybody, right? This idea of active listening is that when you're hearing people, you're internalising that, you're reflecting on it, you respect it, and then you respond, as opposed to what we all normally do, which is when somebody's talking to you, you're already thinking about what you're going to say in response. Yeah. And I know I do it all the time. And so when I teach, I have to physically build in pauses for everybody to stop and to think. And I think philosophy in education is a wonderful way for us to do that, to build in this sense of how do you build an argument, discuss it with other people, respect opposing views, and then at the end of it draw a line and say, well, that was really useful and I learned and I hope you learned too. And you don't need to win, right? That for me is super important. I'd love to see more examples of what the Science Gallery is doing here with Astrid and Thomas and the other Young Leonardos. I'd love to see that in general. Imagine a citizens' assembly for young people, or indeed if they were just included in the citizens' assembly. Why would it have to be separate?
Yeah, well, I think actually there have been. So there was a 21st century charter for learning, which was exactly that, which was bringing together young people, teachers, educators, researchers in education, all of them sitting down to talk about how the education system works, specifically in Ireland, but more broadly globally as well. And it was zeroing in on all sorts of issues that Astrid and Thomas so eloquently kind of brought up around gender inequality in their schools, whether it's, a certain courses not being offered in an all-girls school, whether it's, course, even just a simple thing like timetabling. Thomas brings up that he had to choose between physics and music, and he didn't think that was right. That he was wondering whether the person who did that had the thought that maybe somebody would want to do both. And I think that kind of thing, you get such rich conversations when you bring together all those different sorts of ways of looking at a problem, and that's what the Science Gallery does.
Yeah, it's multiple perspectives. It'll give you multiple solutions, right?
Yeah, and it will also highlight where your black spots are, because as one person you'll have your own perspective on things, and by definition you won't be able to see the other perspective until somebody shows it to you. It's a much easier way of learning a lot of things very, very quickly by kind of communication through social activities. So I think that's something
I think
that came
this
through
is super important, because you think of in every country there's always huge debates around education and education policy and the way schools should run and the way people should behave as teachers and students. And there's always this drive to make a really simple solution come from it, which completely is at odds with the complexity of the way we all learn and the fact that we all don't come from the same home with the same backgrounds and have the same identity, and that education is going to be a unique process for every learner, and that thus the system needs to respect and acknowledge that complexity and in some sense embrace it. And because when you do, everyone's just being honest, right? And it's just like, right, well, if you come from a so-called deprived area, you are far less likely to get into university or to do things that maybe somebody from another part of town might do. But maybe that's not your goal, or maybe the education system needs to take that into account and provide more resources in one place than it does in another. What I liked, I saw a Far Side cartoon about this where it talked about equity as opposed to equality in education, which means giving everybody the same shot as opposed to giving everyone the same amount.
Yeah, I think that's a really neat analogy, right?
So in education, there's an awful lot written about change culture and how do you move from the way we are now to where we would like to go. And also understand that when we get there, it may be the wrong place and that we need to be adaptive. So there's a huge amount of research that goes on around the area of leadership. That can come from schools, it can come from young people, it can come from everywhere, and leadership can be dispersed as well as being invested in individuals.
My name is Jerry McGrourk. I'm a professor of education in NUI Galway. I've always liked the idea of a teacher being somebody who works alongside a student rather than in front of them. A lot of my early research was done with students about their own lives and their own experiences, and I suppose one of the things that I noticed very quickly is once you get the students engaged in the research, that they actually feel part of it, or that they feel that this is about them and not necessarily for them but for other children down the line, they really can. It's almost like they come with you then, and they walk the journey with you. So they become participants in something that is really meaningful. I think we need to try and replicate that. Then that means I think we have to connect to students' worlds, and that's all of the different kinds of worlds we have out there. I spoke to a student yesterday. What he said was really, really extraordinary. He said, I was 6 years in secondary school, and the teachers at the end of 6 years were still not able to pronounce my name. And I thought to myself, from a justice point of view, from an inclusion point of view, from almost every point of view, and somebody's name is so central to who they are, I thought, you know what, that is such a pity. And whatever piece of video I was showing yesterday, it really resonated with him, and he was so pleased that this issue was named, And I think it's terrible to have to wait to 23 or 24 before something that is so core to you and so damaging to you in some ways, or hurtful, was actually out in the open, So I think the biggest barriers to inclusion really are not choosing students. I think that's the biggest barrier. Again, it's kind of getting out of the way, and by that I don't mean teachers don't do the work. Yes, they do, but it's just the job of schools and teachers really is, and all of us, is to make those connections, and they, I think, have to come out of the students' kids' own social world and join up the dots, or help them join up the dots, and provide a kind of a pathway through schooling, education, whatever.
Yeah, that was so interesting. Like, this idea of distributed leadership seems absolutely key in this area, that we're not just listening to one person who's been given the power, and that power is absolutely critical in our equation here. So that's it. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening. We are 101, The Ways We Learn. As I've said, we're a 10-part podcast. So you can continue to listen to us. You can look us up on whatever podcast platform you use. You can search for 101, The Ways We Learn. Or you can find out about all of those things and lots more at 101thepodcast.com.
So we have a favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show, it'd be fantastic if you could rate and review us on iTunes. It helps us to kind of get to audiences that we mightn't access otherwise. So you could even just talk about us over dinner with your family, with your friends. Or you could just share us with a teenager that you might know who's really interested in getting involved in activism. So we've been Jane Chadwick and Shane Bergin. 101 is produced by Bureau, and it's supported by Science Foundation Ireland.
Hi, I'm Margie McCarthy. I'm the Head of Education and Public Engagement with Science Foundation Ireland, and we're really happy to support 101 because there's a science behind everything and there's a science behind learning as well.